morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of the Dharma Bum Show. I appreciate y'all joining me for yet another video. Today's topic is going to be sort of interesting, at least I hope so. By way of channel news, just to say the same thing we say every week. Thank you so much, guys, during the week for the likes and the subscribes. We really appreciate the love to the channel. We definitely love doing this channel. My boys here, you can see them in the background there, doing their co-host duties, guarding the little spot we have here at the dog park. Here for another lovely day. The weather is really quite fantastic. Beautiful late summer weather here in Northern California. And so just thank you guys so much for the love to the channel. Let's keep growing the community, keep growing the channel. We'll try to answer as many comments as I can. And I'll be particularly interested to hear what you guys think about today's topic. This is a video that I've wanted to do for quite some time, actually, and been on my mind. And haven't had a chance to do it. I've had all the stuff in the research bookmarked. Last night I went out and bought one final book. I found an actual translation of this this document we're going to examine. And the title of today's show is Buddhist Archeology. And we're going to call it show number 1 because I'm probably going to do a bunch more on Buddhist archaeology. I love religious archaeology. When I was a practicing Christian, I studied, every single thing I could get on Christian and Israeli archaeology. Of course, there's a lot of material in that genre because that particular area, especially the world, is very concentrated, and it gets people pay a lot of money to really concentrate and focus archaeological endeavors in that area. So a lot of finds, and it's very interesting. And far from the sort of historical and scriptural critics who tend to want to find the flaws in a mythology, I tend to like how the archaeology and history fills in on the faith that I already have and makes it stronger and really reinforces the things that we've been told, in this case about Buddhism. So the title of the show is Buddhist Archaeology, show number 1. And it's about what might well be, guys and gals, the most ancient Buddhist text extant in the world. Now, at the moment that I'm about to, the article that I'm about to show you, the moment that article was snapped in time, this document was at the Smithsonian, I believe. But we'll take a look in a second. And I'm not sure exactly why it was there. Maybe because of the Afghan war, because this document was originally from Gandhara in Afghanistan, which is a place that we see we used to see before the takeover of the Taliban government there. We used to see a lot of interesting Buddhist history because Buddhism was extremely strong in Afghanistan, extremely early. And especially in the Gandhara area, they had their own script, actually, the Gandhara script, for copying Buddhist scripture. And a lot of the ancient documents that we have from Buddhism, some of the oldest extant ones, are from the Gandhara region of Afghanistan. And also, it's an interesting place, just as a side note. Afghanistan is where Buddhism did a strange sort of fusion with sort of Greek culture. And so it's where we begin to see sort of Greek style Buddhist statuary, for instance. You may remember some of the very famous ones that were destroyed by the Taliban that were carved right into mountains themselves. But there's a lot of surviving just normal statuary from that period of time and from that area. So we know a lot about that area. Why do we tend to get documents from That particular area in general, two reasons. One, that was just an early outpost of Buddhism. It's one of the places where it spread very, very early on. Secondly, the environment of Afghanistan is very different than the environment of India. And by environment, I mean actual physical climate. In India, we do not see a lot of ancient manuscripts because it was all biological material, and biological material does not do well in the climate, generally speaking, in the climates of India. We start to see it more preservation, later preservation as we get up into the Himalayas, but we really see it in Afghanistan again because it was a very strong outpost, maybe even a major outpost of right from the get-go of early Buddhism, and because the environment was conducive. It's no longer conducive, but that's social because of the Taliban government not I don't know how many more Gandhara finds we're going to be getting. So this one's kind of precious. Let's take a look at it, guys, and let's see if we can bring it up here. And there we go. So this is and about 2,000 years old. So right at the birth of Christ. Now, nobody really wants to be definitive about these sorts of like Guinness Book style titles of which is the oldest document in the world, because somebody will go in a museum or in the ground and dig one up that's older. So, but this definitely is in the running, this document in the running for what might perhaps be the oldest extant Buddhist text in the world so far that we know of. It's a birchbark scroll. Oh, I'm sorry, I went a little too fast there. I'm working without a mouse today. You can see the photos of it there of kind of what it looks like, but it's in much, a lot of it has been read. It's about 80% of a document that I'm about to talk about and tell you about. Um, about 80% of it is there. And the fellow has a YouTube video, which is on this page, which of course this page will be linked in the description of my video below. But they have a YouTube video embedded in this page, which I highly recommend you watch. It's about an hour long and it's a little scholarly, but it's really cool. Really gives not a background of the Gandhara Buddhist history and community, and also of documents in general that have come out of that area, as well as these documents. And the fellow who is the author of all of this, um, the focus of the article and the lecturer in the video, has also put out a book, and we're going to talk about that in a second because there is a translation. I didn't know that at first, so I went and read the oldest current translation of this ancient Mahayana text. And I guess I'm giving spoilers, dropping them everywhere, right? But it's a Mahayana text. Um, it's so ancient that it exists in a time when experts argue whether Mahayana even existed or whether it was a couple of different other schools that ended up combining to make Mahayana. But it's a Mahayana text, and so from 2000. And again, we'll talk about translations, we'll talk about all the kind of things. I just want to pause for a second on sort of what this means in general. This document sets back our known timeline of Mahayana scriptural lineage, if you will, by about 200 years minimum. So that's a pretty huge, I mean, if that were a telescope, it would be like the difference between Hubble and the James Webb, okay? It's like, this is a 200-year glimpse closer to Buddha, back in time, and specifically at what is a core, comes from the core sort of Mahayana school and tradition. And so this is only like 400 or so what odd years after, Buddha went into parinirvana, that we are seeing not just the way that this text was manufactured, the way that it was taken care of. Um, we first of all, it was part of a bigger collection, probably the proto collection that ended up becoming the Mahavastu, which we're going to talk about in a second. So this would have been one sort of scroll book, if you will, um, in a larger sort of collection that at the time was probably just traveling together in like, you know what I mean? It was probably just housed together, but had not yet maybe been bound together into the Mahavastu as a single sort of volume yet. But it's a key component of the Mahavastu, and what it is the many Buddhist text, the many Buddhas, what's known as the many Buddhas Sutra. Um, that's one of the first things I learned from this article, and I went right away. And the first version of the Mahavastu that I could find, and pretty much the only version currently, is an out of copyright version over at the Internet Archive, the Internet Library, the Open Library, of the Mahavastu. And I immediately, of course, have read a couple times already for this video um, the text of the many Buddhas Sutra, which is what this document is. Now, the author, first of all, is tentative to immediately connect this document directly. My initial investigations, my research won't be complete until I do a side-by-side, line-by-line comparison, which I'm going to do, by the by, and maybe I'll come back and do a second video after I do that. My initial impression, however, on having read the first one a lot, and then I just bought his book, the fellow who did this study, and his translation of this actual document, this Birchbark. It is an extant source. It comes before what we have in the current translations of the Mahavastu, way before, several centuries perhaps before what we have in the current Mahavastu, but it is the ancient extant version of, in fact, the Many Buddhas Sutra. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Whereas he was, wanting more evidence and more research and everything, I'm just going to go out and say it. I mean, I guess it's provisional in the sense that after I studied the document a little closer, and especially side by side, the two translations, the one that we have in mass circulation, and then his translation of this ancient Birchbark, I guess I could revise that decision. But right now, I'm just going to tell you that I think it is. And that pushes back the lineage of a core Mahayana grouping of texts known as the Mahavastu by a couple of centuries, guys. That's huge. That's a huge push back into the history of Buddhism, and very much authenticates the idea that Mahayana has been around for a very, very long time and was a part of the original sort of Dharma post post Buddha, when after Buddha went into parinirvana, after our Lord went into parinirvana. So yeah, so I'll link to the main article again. Down at the bottom we have a video which I highly recommend. It's long and scholarly, but it tells the whole history, and especially he gets around to the history of this fragment, even down to what's been done to preserve it and whatnot, how it's being kept. So I recommend you start there. Then, if you want to see the current English, best English sort of translation that we have of the Mahavastu, it's like a lot of Mahayana scripture. It's this out of print version. I'm going to link to all three volumes in the description below. It's at the Internet Archive. You can get it in various formats, but I really recommend for reading, and especially for scriptural comparison, doing side-by-side scrollings, I recommend the PDF version. For that kind of study, it will work the best for you. This is free, and the link will be in the description below. If you check in the content page, you will see, I think it's page, I've almost got it memorized now, I think it's page 39, where the Many Buddhas Sutra begins. And you can read there what was known about the many Buddhist Sutra at that time. Again, quite some time ago that this translation was made, and then the current most thought of translation in English you'll see there. Um, and again, that's that is what this document is. And now, if you want to get the translation of the actual birch bark, which I didn't know until very, very recently, and I went and bought this last night, literally last night, guys, because, you know, buying things is something that I have to do very thoughtfully. I try to renounce as much as I can and not deal with a lot of money. But we went ahead and got a copy of this. This is the book written by the guy who's in the article that we looked at the beginning of the video. And in this book is the translation of the birch bark scroll, as well as pretty much the entire content of that video I just recommended, but in book form, more sort of laid out in scholarly literature form. Um, and so yeah, so then you can do, like I said, like I plan on doing in very short order in the next week or so, a side-by-side comparison, line-by-line comparison, understanding that the very beginning and the very ending of this piece are missing. About 80% of it is extant, and then about 20% is missing. But you should be able to do a line-by-line comparison. I'm going to do it, but I think you will find that I'm correct, that it's not just a supposition. This ancient document, this 2,000-year-old Gandharan Buddhist text, which was translated, we believe, from what's known as Buddhist text, which is a sort of late form of Pali, but it's very, very direct translation into this Gandharan text, and it's wow, it's like super old for Buddhist texts. Buddhist archaeology doesn't get a lot of love, unfortunately. What little love it gets is noteworthy, which is why I'll probably do more videos about this sort of find, because it's a really amazing find. And again, this particular document pushes back our view into the ancient history of Buddhism by a couple of centuries. And once the translation is firmed up and what's known as the Black Book, the actual academic book with the translation and explanation and everything, and the sort of provenance of the piece, everything comes out in this known as a Black Book. Once that comes out, I believe that this will become one of the sources that translators will use when they look at extant material to compare different variations in the text, and to try to rectify and make those uh, translations sharper and better. This will become one of the go-to texts, in my opinion, in very short order, in probably a year or two at the most, from that Black Book, and we'll see that. So there we go, guys. I hope that this has been sort of an interesting video. Um, But again, the title up at the top of the sort of page really doesn't do sort of justice. We don't really know if it's the oldest known Buddhist manuscript, but again, the provenance of it, the history of it at the current moment, and really with the state of Buddhist archaeology, which again I say is not in the greatest state. It's not the most well-funded field. I think it's going to be the oldest one that we know of for a while, certainly one of the oldest, and just wonderfully in line with what we currently believe, which, going back to what I said in the beginning, I love archaeology and religious archaeology in particular because of the holes it fills into my faith. And this definitely gives me even more faith in what is very much a core Mahayana set of scripture, the Mahavastu. Um, it definitely lends a lot of life to that document when you're reading it, to know that people, even just a few centuries after Buddha, were spreading this document far and wide across the world, far enough that one of them survived all the way, and in Afghanistan of all places, which is not a place people commonly leaps to their mind to think of, oh my goodness, that's a sort of Buddhist location. I hope it's been informative. All the links will be in the description below. I totally recommend you. You should be investigating the Mahavastu anyway. It's a great set of and it's very core to, especially very ancient and original Mahayana belief system. So it's a great document to add to your scripture collection. Um, and and this is definitely an incredibly interesting archaeological find that relates directly to a core sutra in that document. And so there we have it, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me for yet another episode of the Dharma Bum Show, episode 9. Our next episode is going to be my very first ever book review. And I can't wait. Again, as I said in a previous video, last week's video, I'm going to get to start branching out into a lot more interesting things that I really want to talk about. So we're going to do a book review. I actually bought a book and I'm reading it just for the book review because it's like a book report and that's what you're supposed to do. And alrighty, so thank you for joining us for yet another video. I hope you found it interesting and informative. I really do hope that you take the time to examine some of the material about this document and to keep studying scripture in every way possible. And Buddhist archaeology is one really interesting way to approach scriptural study. And so, yeah, thank you so much. And we'll offer you our usual blessing. Me and the boys are here. Let's see if we can see them on the video. Not quite so much, but they're right down there. And you know the old saying, let sleeping dogs lie, right? So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed our offerings today. A little bit windy, I guess. We got Buddha there. And I hope that your day is auspicious. We offer you our blessing for that. And we'll see you again real soon.